together to help people with the otherwise. Okay, so straight to one question that we've got from the public. We haven't had any written.
40 minutes.
Oh, sorry. So I know one person was on the committee last night. Are you okay with the minutes? I know that Paul's told us. Yeah. Yeah, so you're happy for me to. Sorry. Declarations of interest, sorry. I would like to say that I've got an opportunity interest in Ryde Interchange because I'm a councillor there, but it's not a community. Anybody else? Got an interest? Okay, so question time.
Good afternoon, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, Kathy Foods. I was reading here about 2002 when I brought a pack of kids to present to the team to try and improve play spaces in Oakfield, which was receiving Regeneration money. I've not been in here a while, so it's nice to be back. I don't intend to make it on there, so I'm interested in the item on the agenda that's to do with Ryde Interchange. And my question is that it's related to the opportunity over the last year that we've had, or the team of Regeneration and Transport have had, to bring these particular designs that are included in the consultation forward to us at a much earlier stage. I believe it could have been brought forward in summer 2020 when the designs first published by Portsmouth City Council, with the exception of 190 metres of cycleway along the Ryde Esplanade. Otherwise it was identical. So please, can the committee look at what work prevented an earlier release of this document and this design? And could you look at the original details of the advice which highways claim legally allows them to cut across public open space and removes leisure designated facilities, which also include the most popular public conveniences on the whole of the Isle of Wight, please?
Thank you.
I think with your question, Chairman, we were going to talk about that as part of the overall presentation on the Ryde Esplanade. So we will cover the points made by the questioner.
Okay, so that's fine. I'll save that agenda item.
Chairman, I think there's no other written questions.
Thank you. So, going to our first part of the agenda, the bus improvement plan. So, I'll hand over to...
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to do a very brief introduction. I'll do a very brief introduction, and then I'll hand over to my colleague Stuart Chandler to talk about the details. It's effectively a government initiative to improve buses in areas of the country. And the government are looking for bids from transport providers together with local authorities to develop plans in which we can enhance the bus services, the bus provision within a particular area. Now, what the first step of that is obviously for us to make that bid, and then we develop plans, which we're doing in partnership with Hampshire County Council, who are supporting us, given the economy of scale that Hampshire have got in their particular area, and also because they're working with the same providers as some of the vectors that we're providing on the island. So, a big opportunity. I'll hand over to Stuart just to talk about a few details, and then we can take some questions.
Thank you, Colin. This is, as Colin set out, this is a national strategy. This is a national bus strategy released by the government in March, in which it requires local transport authorities, which are the council as one, to follow a process by March of next year to enter into either an enhanced partnership or to pursue franchise arrangements. In regards to the steps in the timetable we've got in front of us, it is initially to formally provide notice of our intent to enter into an enhanced partnership or a franchise by the end of June, in which case Cabinet agreed that would be the case in previous Cabinets, and that was published in the end of June, so that is the first timetable step that we need to take as a local transport authority. What comes next is the development of the bus services improvement plan. And so this is an analysis of the bus services as they currently are. It's understanding what improvements can be made and working in partnership with the stakeholders and the operators directly. It's looking at what can be done to bring them up, what can improve the services and make it a more useful service so we get that transition from reliance on private vehicles to bus use and sustainable travel in the long term. And so we need to publish the bus services improvement plan by the end of October, and following that we then need to enter into that enhanced partnership with local operators by the end of March, so we can start the process of working together to achieve the targets and aspirations that we set out in that improvement plan. Some of those improvement plans will be looking at investment in key corridors, routes to make it easier to understand for people to use, also bus priority measures at junctions and at different hinge points in the network. Their bus priority is probably going to be the main driver in regards to this, because it is that transition away from private vehicle usage to bus use. It's also seamless integration with other modes of travel. So this is not just looking at the bus industry and seeing that this is the way forwards. It's actually integrating with active travel, whether it's walking and cycling, whether it's rail services, or whether it's other modes of travel as well, making sure ferry connection services and everything else all works. And so this opportunity through that improvement plan, we then got a guide by which we can then develop that plan going forwards and work together. And we'll be having to set targets within that for improvements to bus service times and take up and usage of bus services. And so that's going to be set out within that. That will be published every year and then reviewed every 6 months and then republished every 12 months. And so again, it's backing up, updating, working with the operator on commercial opportunities to upgrade their fleet of vehicles, making them modern, making them decarbonising the fleet, and giving an alternative to the current diesel services we've got relying on at the moment. But really what we want to do is make this proposition for local bus services more attractive so that new people use them and can see it as a true form of travel rather than just relying on private vehicles. And again, it's filling in the gaps in the network where at the moment rural areas, unfortunately, with previous having to make previous decisions, this funding that they're bringing forwards will help us if we're aspirational enough in our plan. The BFT and the government will be confident to invest in what we're proposing, so that then that money can go into the infrastructure improvements, but also potentially go to subsidised services and even look at reducing fares on services as well. So a combination of all of these is what we're proposing within the plan and within the enhanced partnership thereafter.
Thank you, Chair. I'll open it up to Councillor Mayor.
Well, funny colour, new heatings, on a green sort of red, so I'm not sure
Probably
what
just
that's
Charlie
right.
that.
I'll speak up. I think we all want to welcome this, it's an excellent development. One thing that's just worrying me, and that is something about the deliveries. It refers to, on page 13, paragraph 13, it refers to the unemployed council officers responsible for transport. I didn't really think about it when I thought about this. And I also see in the paragraph above that the budget for this, which will be given by the Department of Transport, seems to be transferred, is it completely to Hampshire Council Commercial Services? Because, obviously, to me, I think it's important to start to build up some expertise, some staffing expertise on the island, because our situation is completely unique to that. Hampshire and the island, the bus systems are completely different from each other. So, I was wondering if you could help me out with this. How are the resources going to be managed?
Just to come in on that particular point, it's an issue of capacity that Stuart Chandler here is the bus strategy officer, but he's also the officer for highway safety, and he's also the officer until recently for highway capital programme. So it's a capacity issue really. Hampshire County Council, as I mentioned in the introduction, are doing this on a big scale with about 4 or 5 operators. So they have the economies of scale, but you're right, we do need to make sure that Hampshire's focus is respond to the island. So in the relationship we're going to be creating with Hampshire County Council, the big thing that we emphasise is that it has to be island related and it has to be specific to the island to what we want. So yes, I take the point that Hampshire could theoretically step out and look at it more strategically on a wider regional basis, but we want to make sure, and part of the relationship, the agreement with Hampshire, is that it has an island focus. But it's a capacity issue, effectively.
Can the budget be arranged such a way that there is some capacity building around staffing?
Once we get successful with a bid, one of the parts of that bid will be building capacity internally in-house. The problem at the moment is that it's very quick turnaround. So I think what was the date that we actually got the bid in the first place?
The formal intent was notice of intent was the end of June.
Yeah.
And that goes out. We initially got £100,000 worth of capacity funding, which you paid reference to, and obviously that will be used in part to engage and commission Hampshire to assist with this piece of work. However, as of today, just had a notification that the further funding, capacity funding, will be made available and they will give the council in the coming days. From that, we'll understand what that means going forwards, because we need that field to understand capacity funding is great to get to this point, but if we need to report on it every 6 months, and if it's got to be, then published every 12 months, we've then got to have the staff to be able to do that going forwards. And yes, I'm working in transport for 18 years now, but this, it does require its own attention.
Yeah.
And so we've got
Consultation,
yeah, indeed. And so the consultation we're hoping Hampshire assists with that. We've got transport planning coming on board as well. Hopefully we'll be enrolled in September, and when they're in place as well, myself, and then we can actually look to, if there's additional capacity funding, we can look to fill in the space as well that a public transport officer or a similar role may play as well. But we need to sort of see how the government play capacity funding.
Anybody else want to? Councillor Burke, thank you.
Thank you. Clearly, this is a thing that we need to be in, so there's absolutely no doubt about that. The question is the expectations of what will come out in the end, because buses are most efficient when they're full and going in urban areas, and don't always translate into rural areas unless you've got significant subsidy on them. And that's usually what causes the lack of buses in rural areas. And we've got lots of rural areas in between our urban areas, so that sort of makes them expensive and at times inconvenient to use. So if you happen to work in Cowes and live in Shanklin and you have to work a Sunday shift, so it's impossible to get home. So it would be great if we can get something more from it. The other thing is, in terms of the environment and the shift to more environmentally friendly buses, in terms of carbon, electric models require frequent charging and don't lend themselves very easily under the current technology to the sorts of journeys that you do on the islands. So, I think we need to be in it, and we hope for better technologies that will help us. But if there's not money, significant money, there's a little bit of a question mark about how much it can actually deliver.
In regards to the funding made, in funding made available by government, there is the opportunity to secure up to £4 billion worth of funding. Then that's obviously across all of the local transport authorities. We're not yet to understand how that is structured in regards to capital and revenue, because revenue in a lot of ways can be more useful in these circumstances than capital. However, in the first instance about what we're going to get through this, the next item on the agenda, the Transfer Interchange, is probably the project which is the starting point that this is bus priority. That's the premise upon which this is built, and the DFT gave confidence in regards to that project on the basis it gives bus priority and that interchange with other modes of travel. And so this is the sort of project, smaller and larger scale, which will be coming forward through this as well. In regards to the rural areas, we're looking at demand responsive travel and that sort of projects and proposals being there rather than a regular timetable service that operates every half hour through these areas, which we know unfortunately there is not going to be the numbers of people to make it commercially viable. However, something that's demand responsive, that could potentially work. And we've got to trial those, see how that goes, and this is the engagement with our partners at community bus services, Fit Bus as well, making sure that we integrate with them and see what part they can play in the whole. It's not just us and Go South Coast when it comes to that conversation, it's a wider conversation with all of the bus operators and wider to that all of the local transport operators as well.
Yeah, just a quick one really, that is interesting that two of these items that we're talking about today are part of an overall piece on local transport plan and on moving towards more sustainable transport options. We are developing a local transport plan over the next 2 years, and we will be coming to this committee to talk about that, to talk about how it's developed, and we want the involvement of all members within that process as well. So it's something that these are two elements of that story, in that we need to think about alternative transport methods. We need to encourage renewable ways of dealing with transport. I think transport at the moment seems to be in that transition period. It's moving from the internal combustion engine to alternatives, and at the moment we're in that transition period, and it's not necessarily commercially right. So in some instances, government are going to have to step in, and they're going to have to step up and actually start to provide funding to support that. What that looks like and what that expectation might be is something we need to, well, as you said, Councillor, we need to be in it to win it, and we need to be in at an early stage to start to influence that and to start to put the island government up to say, we're really interested in taking this forward, and we're really interested in providing leadership as a council.
Thank you.
Just to that, it's very, very likely that there will be pilot schemes to try and work out how things can work in our sort of environment. And I would just encourage us to be very willing to put our hand up and volunteer for such things. And the funding will go for that.
Thank you, I agree. Anybody else? Kelly? I've got a question, it's a slightly softer kind of area, but what engagement would we do with the public around, carbon neutral and the message surrounding that?
Sorry? Again, another sort of strategy action plan, which has been in development for quite a few years now, is the carbon management plan and the climate change strategy, which encompasses a lot of these issues that we're talking about. So we're talking about local transport, we're talking about housing, we're talking about all sorts of other areas where we do need to transition to a low carbon economy, low carbon way of living. And this is one element of that overall plan. Again, it's something that's been in development. It'll be something that will be coming to members for consultation, for their comments to bring in. I think we already did that to a certain extent with the previous committee, but again, it's an ongoing dialogue. It's not a strategy that fixes in stone and you end up on the shelf. It's something that needs to grow and needs to continue to develop as we move forward.
Absolutely, and let our residents know as well.
Yeah.
Message is clear. Any more? No? Shall we go on to the next?
I was just thinking, Chairman, were there any outcomes that the policy scrutiny committee was to see? I know reference has actually been made to publishing the bus service agreement plan by the end of October and also the partnership scheme by the end of March. Is there anything that the policy and scrutiny committee can do to assist with that?
Yeah, we need to bring that back here as well.
Yeah, happy to bring that back at the point. I think the schedule unfortunately doesn't fit in line with the meeting timetable. However, I'm happy to engage with members prior to the submission just to see, so everyone's aware of what's been proposed in regards to the approval plan as we through the due process as well. And we're engaging firms, what Colin was saying, we're going through the whole engagement process as well to develop this, and we've been talking about the same matter probably a few times in regards to the climate change strategy and also the developing local transport plans. So we will be coming back to the same subject a number of times as well. So happy to keep that conversation going.
Yeah, if you could come to the committee, it's not in line with our meetings and stuff like that. We'd like to support it and work beyond that.
I'd like to formally move that we accept option 2.
Yeah, can you agree with that? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to give it to help again.
Thank you.
By demonstration.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just give a very brief introduction on the Ryde Transfer Interchange, and then I'll bring in my colleague David Newton to talk about in detail. Just a brief where this has come from. 2018, November 2018, there was a bid made based on consultation to the Department of Transport as part of the Transforming Cities Fund. Now, the original bid, which is a partnership between Hampshire County Council, Portsmouth City Council and the Isle of Wight Council, was around £300 million worth of improvements to bus corridors, bus interchanges and encouraging walking and cycling. The Department of Transport, we went for the bid, we had an overall idea of what we wanted to target with the bid, particularly for the Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight bid, by the way, is one of 40 schemes that are operating across South East Hampshire. Unfortunately, we didn't get the funding level that we originally intended to get, so we were looking at 300 million. That was reduced significantly to around 45 to 50 million. However, the Isle of Wight Council's contribution hasn't gone down in the same proportion. So we originally had a bid for £15 million. That bid is now £10 million. So the sort of what we're trying to intend to do with the bid and with the funding fits still with the overall vision that we want to achieve. We see this in some ways, this interchange, as a flagship to start to demonstrate that sustainable transport and that thinking towards sustainable transport on the island. It's a big investment in Ryde, but a big investment on the island as well in terms of a public transport interchange to make life easier for people walking, cycling and using public transport. Effectively, that's a sort of a high-level view of it. What I'll do now is hand over to David, and David will talk through some of the details, but also David will talk about some of the issues that we've already had through in terms of some concerns that people may have, in terms of some of the objectives and some of the things that we're thinking about.
Yeah, indeed, it's important to stress that what we're talking about now is proposals that are open to consultation, and the whole point of putting those proposals out there is to get feedback, and that's an ongoing process. As you know, the recommendations you may have seen in papers for Cabinet, we're seeking to take those recommendations into consideration as we finalise the design. So what I can give you is some early feedback. I think also it's important to stress that not only is this a cross-zonal partnership, but on the island it's a partnership as well. There's 4 elements to the funding that we've received for the island. Those consist of the rebuilding, reinstatement of the tramway pier to enable a pedestrian and cycle routes, and hopefully to also engender something of a fast promenading experience, making a feature in the area as well. We have improvements to the railway station. I know that many people are very interested in. It's a key component to improving the sense of place around the bus interchange. And each of those 2 projects are being led by key partners. So the pier is being led by Whitewood, and the railway station works are being led by South Western Railway. The Isle of Wight Council, along with some vectors, but the Isle of Wight Council is leading on the works to the bus interchange area and some connecting works with the cycle lanes into that. So it's important to understand that at the moment the consultation I just referred to is about the last 2 elements, the elements that the Isle of Wight Council are leading on about the bus interchange and the cycle lanes. So I know that's a little bit of confusion for people because other elements of the project, the other 2 elements, have been brought along at slightly different timescales, but the public will get a chance to see plans as they're developed from those as a part of due planning, and indeed already as a part of the building consent process. Plans for the pier have already been published recently. But if I bring us back to the projects that the Isle of Wight is working on, this is, as has been said, fundamentally it's an opportunity to make a significant improvement to the way that we support sustainable travel on the Isle of Wight. And as a result of that, and as a result of the funding that we give to support that, we've prioritised bus travellers as at the heart of this proposal. And you'll see from some of the illustrations, that's also at the heart of the layout, the road layout. Because a key feature to bear in mind is that the buses change the way in which they operate. They have a reduced presence in terms of the amount of tarmac dominated by buses, and they're given specific lanes to enable them to turn up George Street. I see them. It's only buses that currently turn up George Street. because prior to this change, as happens now, these buses have to go over the front, around the roundabout, and then back again on George Street. Now, if you add that up with the frequency that is occurring, the number of services, the number of people on those services, the time used, the time wasted, and the carbon emitted by that needless journey was significant enough to bring the benefit, to secure the funding from the Department of Transport. That was really at the heart of the matter. And that also explains why one of the features that has attracted some attention, which is the new traffic light sets at the bottom of George Street, is absolutely key to the plan, because it's the timing of those lights that enables the buses to run frequently and easily and conveniently for the passengers up George Street and gives them that priority over personalised motorised vehicles. One of the benefits of that, or additional benefits of that, of course, is it actually creates a new pedestrian pathway that doesn't exist at the moment from that area through what was currently the taxi area and up into George Street. So that understanding that fundamental is really key to this, because the other thing that leads to is that because the buses need to move westward to be able to make the turn up George Street, it pushes other aspects of the road down, most notably the approach road onto the pier to the west as well. And again, this brings us to another area that's caused a reasonable amount of feedback during the consultation, and there's certainly a lot of press coverage, is that we're having to put the approach road now in a location that's currently occupied by a kiosk and toilets. Now, proposals as set out that enhance facilities as part of the project by Southern Railway into the railway station, and I should probably stress at this point that they're intended to be outward facing to create a similar location to the ones that we're using, outward facing concessions to support the cafe, but also to put in new public services in terms of toilets within the station. And we are in the process of working with our partners to secure, and it's looking very, very promising at this point, to secure even longer opening hours for those toilets, and say to the town council who currently operate those toilets, who won't have to because our partner is so Southwest Railway and Ryde together. And now, removing those physical barriers also achieves something that was actually, to return to the question that was asked earlier, an early consideration in the design of the scheme. So, again, you may have noticed from the papers that this is a long journey, and Colin has mentioned it previously. I'm only 2 months into this journey because I recently joined the council, but I've been seeing an enormous amount of work that's gone on in the past on this. And as you can see, the schemes have been designed over the course of a long period of time, and a part of that was to establish some of the issues that the scheme was due to fix. So early on, colleagues referred back to the latest designs, the existing designs that they had, which came from a much earlier rural regeneration scheme, and set about thinking, well, are these laid out sufficient to meet today's demands and today's issues? And so there was some early engagement with the community to establish some of the issues that needed to be addressed. And one of those was this segregation across the frontage caused by the cafe and public toilets, and there was a request as a result of some community walkarounds to actually get rid of those visual blocks to enable some new vistas of the pier and to create more visibility across the front of the estate. So that hence that led to a key feature in design supported a key feature in design. Again, pause at this stage just to highlight what flags up is that this scheme, while it is transport focused and there are requirements around it in terms of the key aspects of the road logistics that I've explained to you and key restraints in terms of the grant funding, we do see this as a piece of the bigger picture, the bigger aspirations for Regeneration around Ryde. And obviously, colleagues later will be talking about the Regeneration strategy, and we're continuing those dialogues with colleagues to see how these can fit into those wider aspirations. And so we're very keen in how we complete this bill to ensure that whatever we do by taking off a small corner of the Western Gardens does not preclude future development of that space by colleagues of Regeneration, should that be what the people of the town want through due consultation and due planning process. And so a small example of that is, and actually as a part of what we've heard from people as well, is about leading on trading services into the park, into the Western Gardens, that would enable temporary facilities, temporary concessions, and make it easier in the future, should there be development or desire development in that space,
sort of look into those. So we're trying to future-proof this. It's very much about cleaner, greener future travel, but we're also trying to future-proof it for the desire of the community. And again, to touch on the question from the public in terms of planning rights, as I've mentioned, the planning requirement, if there's a development on Western Gardens, you may ask for whether you want to planning for the work that you're doing. Well, the answer is we do. We are working within the planning framework, but it's just not as you might ordinarily see it, because we're working within the law of permitted development rights. Because the Highway Authority has permitted development rights for certain schemes to enable them to do highway works to improve transport facilities. And and we can do those works on the highways and use adjacent to the highways to facilitate those works. And so that's the framework in which we're operating and in which we're, again, liaising with our colleagues in planning to ensure that we're meeting their requirements for that route. I won't go into the details of design. We've had a proposal, you've seen the public consultation. I invite you along with that. Please give us some reviews on those. But as Colin said, I just want to very quickly touch on a couple of the other issues we've had that have become notable. I think the parking situation on the front, the south side of the works, the retail and food outlets at the bottom of Union Street, moving along eastward that way. There's some concern about the arrangements that we've put in place there, or suggested put in place there around parking. And first, I should stress that this is one of the benefits of being out of consultation. This is something that we can indeed consider and weigh up the merits, pros and cons of different approaches, and that's something that we'll look at as a result of this consultation. But just to explain that currently, what we've suggested is we have a very small number of taxis to up by the railway station and then the pier to allow sort of the maximum number of drop-offs for individuals in their cars to drop people off in that space. But there's a feeder taxi rank along the front of that street to enable taxis to be sat in that rank and see when the main rank empties so they can then drive on and fill that gap. So that's why that's positioned as it is. And something else that's also reduced the availability of parking along the front there for the public is that we earlier on, in that earlier engagement as we talked about, we heard a desire to build out the pedestrian space there to create more of a pavement cafe society to enable restaurants and other outlets there to have more customers on the pavement eating al fresco. The mood may have changed as a result of COVID and increased dependency on takeaway foods. We don't know. We'll again look at that more closely and engage more deeply with businesses along the front and with their concerns as a part of the consultation process. I'm acutely aware that we need opportunity to question them. I've been talking for some time, but I'll just turn to Stuart has some background. Do you think there's anything else key that you could touch on or turn to questions?
I think it's just that this consultation process is open. It's not a done deal, and it's about hearing what people have to say on particular elements. And we're already picking up, as David has outlined, some issues that we think we can work around and we can work with to make sure the scheme's right and to make sure that we're never going to please everybody, but we would like the majority, particularly people in Ryde, to be happy with this bus interchange, which as David pointed out, is a green initiative, but also making Ryde more, and that particular area of Ryde, more of a destination rather than something that people are trying to get away from as quickly as possible. So that's basically all we need to say, and we take questions on those particular aspects.
I've got a question. So, the overall scheme, how much more space or green space will be created? Because I think people think that it's going to be less, but I'm told it's going to be more.
Yes, because there's some sort of technicalities about how you might measure this or might measure that. What we talk about is we're approximately doubling the pedestrian-friendly space in the area. So at the moment there's obviously a large expanse of concrete, which is the reversing and maneuvering area for the buses. A big ambition is to create that enhanced pedestrian connectivity from west to east. So there's a nice line of sight across the area, and the whole area looks pleasant. So to do that, we need to provide pedestrian-friendly spaces. And again, that's the point of the consultation going on at the moment, is to give people the opportunity now to say, well, there's like the character of that pedestrian-friendly space to be. And part of making it pedestrian-friendly is to narrow the distances that people have to cross roads and to, as you'll have seen from diagrams, signalised lights giving people more priority, guaranteed to get across roads that do exist there. So yeah, the public space has increased and it's also an ambition, and this is something that we're also hearing from the consultation, so we'll enhance it further if that trend continues until the end of the consultation, is that people really want this to be a very green space to maximise the amount of green that we can develop. So we're also talking to local partners about how to invest in that to work with the community to help green that space rather than just impose our own plans on it.
Anybody else want to ask a question before I ask another one? That's right.
Quite clearly, I'm supportive of this. The previous administration was putting something together and finding funds for it. Although it's the Ryde gateway, it is the island gateway as well. I think that's an important factor. That it's not just what works for the people of Ryde, but it's what works for the whole island. So this is the transport hub for the whole island. And I understand the local members who will get upset because they're getting a lot of comment from the local residents from a very Ryde-centric aspect. And I understand that, and they will represent those views. And I think it's important that you let people vent their feelings and say what they want to. I think it's unfortunate that we've sort of said to them, you can only choose the colour of the seats, whether they're silver or black, but rather than actually letting them comment on anything. I think we should have left it open to anything being up for comment, but to then be decisions to be taken. We know that a lot of those decisions are dependent on the whole deal. But to say to people, you can't have an opinion on some things before they even start, I think was possibly not the best of moves. I think you should allow people to vent their feelings, get into public, and then explain why that particular issue, it might be an issue for quite big, it might be a really big issue for a small group of people. But then explain it, because once the issue is on the table, you can explain that actually to get the money, we have to have the cycle path. To get the money, we have to get better access to George Street. To get the money, we have to increase the pedestrian area. So it's not that you can actually just take it and spend it on something else or spend it a different way. There are conditions linked to what you're doing, and it's good. I personally think that we maybe missed the trick by sort of saying this is how it's going to be, but you can comment on the declaration. I think that was possibly not the right thing to do.
Thank you. Would you like one recommendation to look at consultations and how they deliver in the future? As one of our... Or the language around it.
When you have a consultation, you have to let people, consult people, and the more sort of contained you make it, the more frustrated people will be. But it's I mean, the scheme is going to be very constrained. So I understand that. I've been watching this for the last 3 years, so I know that it's not easy. But telling people you can't have an opinion on this is not a helpful way to move it forward. So it's just an observation.
I was going to say, Chairman, I know on Councillor Hastings' Corporate Scrutiny Committee, there is an item on there for possibly looking at consultation process within the council as one of its work plan items. So that's already been taken out on council.
That'd be great. I'd like to hear that. Thank you.
Just to very quickly, Chairman, I think we realised quite quickly that we possibly, some people picking up the message that we were limiting the things that people could comment on. And I think hopefully you see over the past 2 to 3 weeks as we've opened up this consultation that there are more elements that we will have that conversation about. I think we started up, we may have given that sort of false impression to a certain extent at the beginning, but that wasn't the intention. The intention is as Councillor Clerk pointed out, The fundamentals are there in order to make it work, but then there are some other issues around that. It can actually, like the taxi ranks, like the consideration of green space, etc., that there is a conversation around that. And the interesting point that Stuart talks about, Stuart's been involved in this far longer than all of us really, because he was involved in it from the first part of the bid in 2018, is that it's almost creating a campus. This sort of initial works is limited. It's £10 million, which is a lot of money, but what it does, it creates a canvas in which people can then develop their ideas later, and that's the sort of intention that we would take forward.
Okay, so maybe we need better comms around that to get the
Yeah.
message out, basically. Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair. I was a very good point that Councillor Cricket made there about the consultation. I think one way of resolving it, I think now we've gone a bit far, is the fact that if we go back to Ryde Development Trust in the early 2000s, there has been a lot of consultation, general consultation on that area, how we work with the excavator and the interchange. It has been talked about a great deal already. And we've always say that we've moved to the point where we're at the end of this consultation. We've moved to the point where we can refine the consultation down to what's possible, talk to what's possible. So I think that's a great way of, because it has been going for about 30 years now.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Thank you.
Hello?
Yeah, that's it. Great.
It is supposed to be ready.
Yeah, great.
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of points I'd like to make, but also a couple of questions as well. So, with regards the points I'd like to make, this plan reminds me to a degree of when we first saw the plans for St Mary's Roundabout. They came into quite a lot of criticism in the press and online and from councillors at the time. I was very supportive of it. I saw straight away that there was real benefit to the plans for St Mary's Roundabout. And I think pretty much there was disruption during that process, but ultimately I think the result has been widely recognised that it's made a quite transformative difference to that part of Newport. So, bearing that in mind, I've looked at these plans in detail, and I actually think they're very good. There's clearly some concerns from some residents, from business owners over certain aspects which you've already covered, but overall I think the plans are excellent, and I commend the team for bringing these so far to the table. I'm reminded of the fact that Portsmouth Hull looked very tired before it had the new taxi rank and the new bus station built. Today it looks quite different. It's a much transformed space, and frankly, looking at Ryde seafront and that area in which people arrive on the Isle of Wight, it's very tired and it needs a lot of work. And this, I think, could deliver a real important change in that area. I'm very pleased about that. There are a couple of concerns I have, and they have been raised by members of the public, but in the main, my main concern is about public toilets at the seafront and the timing of the delivery of the replacement toilets. It's good to have, we have to have public convenience there, but what is important is the replacement toilets are there before the other ones are removed. What you can't have, and what we did see in Portsmouth Park, for example, is the time it took to do that project, deliver that project in the half, took a couple of years. If this takes a couple of years, you'll have no toilets. If that facility hasn't already been delivered at the railway station. So for me, I think at the start of this, the first part is delivery of the railway station conversion before you do anything else. I think that's really important for the town. But other than that, if you could comment on that, that would be good. But ultimately, I think they're very good
it's been a key consideration of those facilities from the outset, and it's coming loud and clear through the consultation as well. Thanks for paying weight to that. We're working on different timescales, as I said earlier on about the two projects, and I completely hear what you're saying and about the partners meeting on a monthly basis, to iron out the issues about how we move this forward and how we coordinate, and I think that's an important way on strengthening representation, I shall say, at those meetings to try and bring it help us along that. I do have to recognise, and indeed we have recognised in our plans, that we won't totally control that, because it is their project, they are moving forward, and they work in a very regulated environment, so we're expecting them to have periods of delay, because that's the nature of how they work, because the safety conscious nature, quite rightly, they have to operate in some issues. So we do have a contingency plan around temporary allocation of fluids during that period, should the scheduling not work out. So we're absolutely prepared for that. I think, as I did touch on it earlier, but that's another advantage to leaving training facilities that I talked about. We're doing everything we can in the early planning of construction phases to leave Western Gardens as untouched as possible. That would enable us then to have temporary facilities in the garden, and they do not have to be ugly or awful temporary facilities. You know, we see what an important space that is for the community and for visitors to the island. And just to give you some comfort in terms of timescale, it is very likely to have a whole season, around about 12 months, probably 12 to 13 months ahead of the detail of the design, but we obviously wanted to leave ourselves a little bit of contingency in that time program as well. So the maximum that we're sort of allowing for is up to 15 months. They'll be phased to minimise disruption for different stakeholders in the town. It's a very strong point to make about aligning with the train station that's on the take part.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Lever. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. That's working. David mentioned that the integral part of the securities was that the buses are allowed to make the unnecessary journey around back. But I think we're still going to have, it looks as though there's still going to be buses going to have to do that on the furthest east stop from what I understand. They're still going to have to do that trip. Obviously, one is better than 10 or where buses we've got at the moment. But has there ever been any drafts where that's been tried to move before saying what street is it, George Street, so that it's not having to do that as well. And just a couple of points on the cycle route. Is there a reason why that's coming across the pedestrian area and not planned to run alongside the road essentially? And also now I think an integral part of this would be signage, because I suppose the good thing about the station at the moment is that all buses are typically next to each other, and determining which one to take is a lot easier. Now they're going to be spread out. I think signage, particularly for tourists, is going to be key to make sure that we've not got people zigzagging across streets trying to find the correct bus for themselves.
Absolutely key points. I'm going to pass to Stuart to talk about the bus situation. He's our guru on that one. I can come back and talk about cycle.
Just sort of come back, Councillor Leader. In regards to the bus stand at the far end, which is beyond that junction which comes down George Street, that's there for a purpose, because there's already currently services which operate up Dover Street, so off the roundabout customer that's very that way. It's the intention of the operator that they maintain those services that go in that direction, because they're eastbound heading towards Bembridge, Sandal and so forth in the Bay area, and it's those that will continue there, because there was a period of time where most services either operated up Easter Road or up George Street, missing that section in the middle, and so we diverted it to pick up those communities along that route through there, and they want to maintain that because that has proven to be beneficial to the community and popular as well. In regards to the information signage and so forth, it's our intention to look at real-time information in regards to bus services, have that infrastructure built in, and it's complementary in regards to the earlier paper in regards to the National Bus Strategy, where we're looking at rolling out real-time information beyond this, and so that we're looking for, certainly on the priority routes, the 9s and 1s, connecting on main towns and so forth, we've got real-time information, and again in key locations around the island as well, so that people do not have to do that finding where everything is. It's going to be there in central location, clearly understand from where Toten, where you need to go to, and then when you get to the stand, you understand how in regards to, and I'll cover the actual travel, just because I know where we get to at this point, is that the reason it's on that side of the road, so it connects with the pier and that sort of interchange, and where the majority of people will be cycling and walking up to a point, so it comes into a hub. And also it then goes on to connect into the onward route, which both have St Thomas's Street, which unfortunately have to be on the road because of the physical restrictions of the highway through that route, which will eventually lead you to lanes, walk and so forth, heading out of Ryde. But in the other route, it will take you down onto the harbour, and then along that shared path, it takes you all the way through to Hapley as well. So that's why that connection is on that side, to tie in all of those routes. And it was something that was developed, and it goes back to what we were saying about earlier, the plans and proposals are not just brand new. That a lot of these have been informed by previous designs of the Atkins study that was done previously, and also the LC which were developed last year before, and it's picking up on those that need to be developed through the scheme as well. So they're all tied in, and that's the local cycle walking improvement plans, and it's those that we've used to inform that design as well.
Thank you. Vanessa, Chairman.
Yes, Chairman, I'm not a member of this committee, so is it all right if I speak? Thank you. As a Ryde councillor. Right, I spent half an hour with David at lunchtime today and an hour and a half with my old mate Peter Haywood down at Ryde station trying to understand all the different facets of this. Because looking at it on one of those diagrams, I'm afraid it goes in here and out my left toe, and it was very informative. Peter and I agreed to differ on some things, I might add. I don't know if people know, but it is illegal to reverse a bus or a coach with passengers on, which is one reason some vectors want to reconfigure the way the buses are parked. Something was mentioned about removing the cafe and the toilets would give a view of the pier. I stood on Western Gardens and I thought, who would want to look at the pier, a steel structure with black railings? I can't think of anything uglier, but never mind. The way the plans are being done at the moment, some of the amenity spaces will actually be in the middle of the buses going around them. And I really wonder whether people will want to go and sit in the middle of a traffic island, sit on a traffic island, in other words, with roads going around them. At the moment also, the cafes and restaurants on the opposite side of the road, and this was something pointed out to me, they never get any sunshine. Think about it. No sunshine at all. People use those cafes and restaurants to collect food and go and sit in Western Gardens. And we are now going to remove some of that green space. This isn't good from a tourist point of view. We are a tourist island, and creating a traffic plan for cars is, in my book, not the way to attract tourists. I can understand coming off the roundabout, coming through what is currently the toilets and the cafe to get on the pier. That does make sense. However, you're going to lose a lot of green space to do that. The cafe at the moment, the toilets have been well painted and they're not really that visible, but the cafe itself has been proved an extremely attractive area. Now then, going back to toilets, do we have a firm commitment about toilets and how many? Because I'm sorry, I don't trust South Western Railway. We have a block of 10 toilets there. If you think about the Ryde Carnival, think about the scooters that come over, families that come down the pier during the summer vacation with small children, very often the first thing they need are toilets. And it really is vital that these are either in place or whatever. One question I do have is, will the council be responsible for redoing the station, or is it down to South Western Trains? I I wasn't quite sure when I spoke to Peter about that. But as I said, I think that is critically important. You get a bad reputation for things like that, and it really won't be funny. The nearest toilets, otherwise, I think St John's Hill or something. Who else is in? Phil, would you know where the nearest toilets are apart from the
Eastern Gardens. Eastern Gardens.
You know, you have to think of these things, you know, at the forefront. What else did I have to say? Cafe Stand. Right. Actually, when we talk about reconfiguring the stuff for the buses, we are talking about 4 routes, 2 of which run hourly, 2 of which run half hourly. So we are reconfiguring our whole area for the sake of 6 bus movements an hour. You know, and I'm not quite sure how we can justify that. I think I'll leave you that to think about. A further point about the railway station. That is what would have been British Rail land. I presume now it's all Network Rail, belongs to Network Rail. Do you all realise that Network Rail have a 24 get-out clause? This was why the big scheme in 2007 failed, because there was always the chance Network would come along and say, shut it all down, get rid of it. Now that means you have a cafe inside the station. Who is going to take on the concession? If they can't get funding, they won't be able to borrow money on it because of that British Rail clause. So again, all these little things we have to be very careful about before we go ahead. Sorry to take up so much time, Chairman. Thank you.
That's okay.
Quite a bit in there, and I shall try and cover as best I can, but I missed something, please feel free to come back. One thing that jarred, that I really do feel we need to pick up straight off the bat, is you mentioned about that you didn't think it was appropriate for a project like this to be driven by the needs of the car. And I absolutely fundamentally agree, and so does the whole team that worked on this, because that's absolutely not what we're doing. It's a sustainable travel project from its absolute core. And as we described earlier, that's very much about prioritising the buses in the first instance, but ensuring that pedestrians have a much, much better prioritisation across that space than currently do so. So please rest assured that we're really not driven by the car in this instance. We're very much seeking to support other means of travel and active travel. In terms of toilets, again, you know, agree, touched on it previously, it's a really important issue, absolutely critical, and again brings me to another big picture observation about this, is we're trying to do this to help generate Ryde, as well as providing better sustainable travel on the Isle of Wight. And we do recognise what an important issue this is. We want the town and the island to be left with a fantastic gateway that builds confidence in that space and leads to the next stepping stone, and the next stepping stone, that really helps bring that area up. So we want all local businesses to benefit from what we're doing, as well as the local people to be able to benefit from enjoying that space. So we will do everything in our power to secure the right facilities to support that. And again, I guess I touched on it, but wouldn't make it clear enough. You know, if at the end of the day people feel that what this space really needs to make the most of it for regeneration, if they feel that then the next step in that should be further redevelopment in Western Gardens, then again, this project doesn't do anything to preclude that. I would suggest it supports that, it helps enable that, and then we will be very open to working with colleagues in Regeneration if there's a role for us in highways to do so, to support them further in doing that, because it's critical. And we've had, there's not great what I can say about it, but based on this work we do, we've had more interest from more partners who had plans on the boil, should we say, for development in Ryde that were interested in bringing those forward faster, just to build that momentum for that space. So we really don't want to do anything to shoot ourselves in the foot and not leave the basics like having the right government vision there. To answer your question, though, clarity about who's leading what. We will be controlling the funding for South Western Rail for their project, but they are absolutely in control of project development. So we can put in some limited terms around how that project is delivered, but we cannot be absolutely specific because we then cross the line of procurement rather than our funding arrangements. So we can ensure these principles of funding that we've won are honoured and respected, such as the fundamentals of providing the right kind of facility for the town, but we won't be micromanaging their work. However, we will continue to give feedback, and we've got a very open and productive partnership going there. We're hearing of issues or concerns from local people, we're able to pass that on in a constructive and informed way. And I think, going back to the much earlier question, we have learned lessons about communication. I think there needs to be ongoing communication around that, so people understand that part of the project is also being developed with the public using it. Again, the bus movement justification for the project, I guess this works at two levels. It would be very easy for me to say, yes, but we've got to do that to get the money. That's kind of a simple out on our answer to that question. But I think it is bigger than that, because it's not just about moving those buses, it's about improving that area. And actually, improving that area has so many benefits for so many people. The bus users, whilst they're waiting for it, the people that are passing through, the people that are riding there, actually this is quite nice. You'll see from your designs, there's a sort of a peninsula that leads out from the railway station for people who do arrive. It's a peninsula that leads out and leads right to the bottom of Union Street to guide people up into the town. That's absolutely what it's about. It's not just about saying, oh, the buses want to do this with better level, and this is how we're going to change the whole road. So please don't be distracted by that. We're very happy to support our partners, and as Stuart's saying, supporting and improving bus travel is going to be key to future transport worldwide. But please don't forget how many benefits are packed in with those changes to the streets. And in terms of, I think, the last part, in terms of answering your questions, I feel like I've dropped something somewhere. It's who would use the concessions. We also touched on the number of light across the light sort of characteristics across the way on the south side of the cities there. We have included, as I say, that sort of outdoor table, pavement cafe style, by extending the curb lines there. If that's deemed not appropriate because of the lack of light, so be it. It's an open conversation. That's what we're trying to help around this consultation, to understand the issues and balances. But you will notice, again, along that peninsula that I described, as you emerge from the station where there's 4 trees dotted up to it, that actually, depending how we configure that space, could be a great location for tables and seats. And if you have a cafe, being a small little corner unit, turn it into an outward-facing unit that faces that newly designed public space with cafes, tables and chairs and enhanced planting around them, you could basically transplant what here cafe, I'll take my house and what I've done back in there. You could basically largely transplant that into that location where you do benefit from the sunshine. And in terms of the transport, are people comfortable with transport being around them? There are points even in the existing, and I would be quite tired of the space that we have there at the moment. There are points that are quite popular with people, little peninsulas where they sit and have ice cream and they've got traffic on 3 sides of them. And it's not very neatly designed. But because of the way that planting has been done, it creates a little bit of screening for them, a little bit of seclusion. And again, I think that's absolutely about what we're asking people during this consultation is, how can we make the space in a way that enables you to enjoy it? To enjoy passing through it, to enjoy stopping for a moment here. That's what this consultation is all about. So I welcome your feedback. It's really, really solid questions and really helpful. And actually, I ask everybody in the Bible to please participate and help us think further about how we continue this design of human design.
Thank you. Councillor Neville.
Can I suggest a potential recommendation from the committee? My proposed recommendation would be that the council ensure that it is made clear to the local community that comments on all aspects of the Ryde Transfer Interchange scheme are welcomed as part of the public consultation. The reason I put that recommendation is because I think from the paper at least, as Council Quirk has already made clear, it looks like that people are just being asked to comment on street furniture, and that's not really appropriate, I think. But if we were to welcome all comments, that recommendation would do it. If I email that to the Chair and to Paul now, that would be appropriate.
Thank you for that.
I think Councillor Ward.
Councillor Ward, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Is there any members here at the time? I was the cabinet member at the first Ryde Interchange project, and the issue that Councillor Churchman has just raised about Network Rail can take it back at any time they want was actually raised to me by the director at the time. And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "What is the chances of them taking it back?" He said, "No." We are now 15 years down the line, and did they take it back? No. Why would they want to take it back? But the council at the time fell foul of that warning and pulled out. There were other reasons as well, but that was the main one. And as my colleague has just said, the interchange is looking a bit tired. I think he's being generous with that description. Let's not make that same mistake again. You know, Ryde would benefit from a whole a reshaping, if you like, of the interchange. And I'd just like to say, you know, we made a mistake 15 years ago, in my view. Let's not do it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Churchman.
Just to reiterate, Councillor Ward is right that about the wayleave, etc., and that they can take it back any time. All I'm saying to you is that anybody who takes some concession inside that railway property will not be able to get any form of lending money from mortgages or banks, because the solicitors will take one look at that particular clause. So, as I said, it is a warning. Thank you.
Do you want me to read out the recommendation from the council outboard? It's that the council ensure that it is made clear to the local community that comments on all aspects of the Ryde Transfer Interchange scheme are welcomed as part of the public consultation. So that's being proposed by Councillor Outboard. Was that seconded, Chairman?
Councillor Burke. Who's agreeing with that then?
So do you want all those in favour, please show, Chairman?
Thank you,
That's Chairman.
yeah, thank you very much. Also, maybe you share the consultation outcomes with the committee, that would be great for stuff, like that. I think we like that stuff. So, any more comments?
Follow-up question, I think?
Correct? I think they answered all your questions. Your
Not a follow-up question, it's regarding...
Not allowed. It's
No.
question time, unfortunately.
The officer said that was allowed a follow-up question.
At the time.
But in response, not being responded to, a follow-up question.
Very quick.
Yes, it's very quick.
It's very quick.
It was about the curtailment that you mentioned, that the highways were allowed to curtail a certain amount of public space. I just wanted to, Stuart, if you had the amount of space that can be curtailed under planning laws for highways.
I'm not sure.
Should we do that in written response?
Yeah, I think so. Yes,
Yeah,
please. Thank you.
yeah, we'll give you a written response on that. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the digital strategy.
Thank you, Chair. I do have actually Curzon here this evening, just as my support, so Christopher Ashford is on leave. So we've provided you with an update of where we are to date on the digital strategy that was published April 2019. Obviously, a lot's happened in that it's interim time, and I think it's fair to say that we have to rely on our digital capacity and perhaps accelerate certain elements of this, the plan itself, and especially of how we as council, public sector and residents have engaged with the digital programme really. So I've sort of picked up a couple of things that I could just highlight for you if you'd like, and then I can bring Mr. Curzon in to follow up anything else that I may have missed. But really we're here to hear from the committee, policy and scrutiny committee, and I'd be really, really pleased to hear your thoughts and reflections on progress to date, and if we need to go in a different direction, given what we've been through in the past 18 months, and in fact we are still going through. So just one area that I think is worth highlighting is on the economic development area. We've now had the official letter from the European Regional Development Fund, which probably is the tail end of the European money that we'll be able to receive. And the project was called Rural Productivity Hubs and Spokes, and we're doing it in partnership with the New Forest. And basically, the whole project is worth £2,800,000, and we've got just under £1.5 million from the European Regional Fund. We're calling it Innovation White, and it's going to be refurbishing a building at the BAE campus, the rangefinder house one. And it's going to be a co-working and business incubation space. So there'll be a supportive and collaborative space for businesses to work. So some sort of dirty, as in manufacturing, as well as some digital work as well. And there'll be some business development officers there as well, assisting. But it'll be that'll be the hub, and spokes will be going out across the island over to the New Forest as well, so connecting via the hub at Northwood. Just for instance, the Alfred Council recently relinquished the lease to have at 30 High Street, which you may be familiar with. Now in number 33 High Street, slightly larger area where we do pop-up shops and more work with the community via Shaping Newport. But upstairs there's an area which we can now use this funding. We can look at creating a spokes there as a co-working space, which is very cool. I think any of us who were at the previous the Digital Island, the conferences that we had held in Cowes, we seem to remember the Eagle Labs they've got these people coming over, but they weren't able to come over in the end. But it shows that it's a model of co-working and collaboration that's actually very popular. So for us to be able to get all this funding in, and be able to create our own model that fits the island, and also reach across the solar, which I think is really, really important. So this is quite an exciting project, and we should support hundreds of businesses there. So they got a letter last week and already started work, and the project will run through till 2023. So we'll have a good 2 years of that. The other thing I just wanted to say, pick up just very quickly, looking at the action plan you see it on page 108 of the strategy, actually page 45, page 45 of the strategy, page 108 of your papers, the digital transformation of existing businesses. So 7.1 talks about skills assessment for tourism and agriculture. I think those of us who are involved in any sort of hospitality on the island will know that this sector has really had to step up very, very quickly to take on these new systems of working. So, this would be table apps, booking apps, and so on. So that's really, they've had to upskill kind of very quickly, quite naturally. So say what we've been through with the pandemic has really had to accelerate some of these actions. And I think again, adult social care, not my portfolio, but what we've all had to sort of go through the digital transformation there as well. So I think I'll leave it there. So really, here to me talk. Don't know if Mr. Curzon wants to pick up anything on where we are today. So you have the papers there in front of you. So I'll hand over to Mr. Curzon, and then I'd like to hear from the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Joseph. I think I'll defer to the Assistant Chief Executive on the digital strategy side of stuff. She's got far more knowledge about what we're doing across that. But I just would like to just make a point about the ERDF project, because as Councillor James Evans has said, you know, there is a great deal of change going on in the economy at the moment, and co-working space is something we hear a lot about, and the opportunity for the council to bring forward a building which is going to provide that space up the BAE campus, making use of the lease arrangements we've managed to secure there because of the investment we've had with the sense of bringing a call centre and the valuable additional building that we got as part of that deal. To make that use and get that level of funding into the island to enable us to make that investment is going to be a really great opportunity for new businesses, new innovative businesses and startups on the Isle of Wight. So really good news there, £1.4 million of funding is a great story. I'll pass it to Wendy at the additional stuff.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, good evening, everyone. I don't have an awful lot more to say. I think the section 4 of your paper before you, committee, outlines quite clearly the kind of update of where we've got to with the digital strategy. I think the recommendation in the paper before you is really to kind of have that conversation with yourselves and to hear your thoughts on how we may now take forwards communication and engagement on the strategy delivery to date, understanding the impact that it has had on people, and in particular over the last year when we've all had to become more digitally enabled, not only the impact that the strategy has had so far, but where we may need to move the strategy to, thinking much further ahead. One thing about the digital age is that it progresses at great speed, so we're all very conscious that as a strategy it's something that we do need to be a live document and something that just sits as a strategy as we move forward. So we'd be interested to hear from the committee and to help Councillor Jones Evans with the portfolio in terms of shaping the future of the strategy moving forward, and very timely given the conversations that we've already had this evening about engagement and communication and consultation and the value of it and how you really get something valuable out of it if you do it the right way. So I'll leave it to yourselves to kind of have that discussion and make any recommendations as to Councillor Jones Evans' portfolio work on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I just apologise. Mrs. Farrell wasn't out, it was in my vision, so I do apologise for the
Who would like to speak? Councillor Midland, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be long, I've just got a couple of points. One is about it's a very, very good paper and strategy, and I'm very impressed with it all. But I think when Proveris has kind of mentioned this, that we're in this highly fast-changing world, aren't we? And of course this comes back to my area before, transport, and exactly said, we're in this sort of transformative period of technology. We've very much want to know where to invest, so as not to create white elephants, because something discovered, something else to be invented and not big, and it just starts to be. I'm looking at all these references to white fibre and thinking about the fact that surely once we have a 5G network, there won't be any need for any cabling of any kind. So perhaps we should be worrying less about picking up roads and putting on wires, which maybe in a few years' time will be completely irrelevant. It's just a thought. But it just shows that we're in this very volatile technological situation. The other thing I wanted to say about this paper is that, although I like it very much, I found, although it talks a lot about education and training for work, I think there ought to be also an emphasis on public education, really comprehensively working with all generations in that real all-life learning stuff, because until you get the population up to the level where they can use it and can exploit it, then this fantastic idea is not going to work. We need the public to be really, as highly educated digitally as possible so as to be successful. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Okay, right, to sort of respond to that'd be helpful. Thank you, Councillor Medland. I think the whole 5G thing is quite interesting, but I think the way that we're having this, hard wiring is more resilient as well, from understanding. And I think what we're getting on the island, each property will be getting its own fibre to the house. So I believe that other providers, they have 60 they have 60 properties per one fibre. So I think what we're getting is really going to be future-proofing us for many, many years, the amount of data that particular property can have. But I take on your point. I think that would probably be really helpful for sort of areas that maybe aren't maybe may miss out on some of the fibre capability. So I think with the training aspect of it all, so the two things done is we've got the skills audit report that will be ready in September. So that's been worked on for the past, I think, about a year and a half, I think, Mr. Curzon, something like that, isn't it? So it's a big piece of work there, so we understand what that aspect that looks like. I've been working with Scrutiny College on that and other HTS on the Friday as well. And just recently had a meeting last week with an Isle of Wight business, and then looking at setting up a coding school as well. Again, that was something that came out of one of the conferences that we had, this coding school. So I think there's a lot going on. It's just about pulling it together and coming out from this the action plan and what's still relevant, what we need to push forward a bit more and pull back on, or just refine things in the new climate.
Thanks, Claire.
A couple of thoughts. One is it mentions the tourism industry. Quite a bit of the tourism industry is quite into online booking systems and things like that. That's not it. It's not. And with COVID and closure for effectively 2 seasons, their marketing model of people coming back every year may be broken. And that's possibly an area that we could actually look at upskilling small businesses. Defrightening it. So that's certainly somewhere that we can actively look at growing. The other thing, 20 plus years ago, I was working in London Stocklands, and London Stocklands by then had established this cafe culture around the periphery. Were building a lot of lifestyle type properties, which were for startup businesses, entrepreneurs, online type companies, where you literally lived above the office. The old idea of the family shop where you can do a lot of it. But these were high-class residences and purpose-built office facilities, and they mixed residential and commercial sort of very elegantly. And in some of our regeneration, that's something that you might look at. Something like the far side chain. Rather than just making it second homes, actually make it regeneration business living units for because it's a bit special. You might see something you have more on the village, but you've actually got more facilities for maybe the business hub on the ground floor, or maybe some shops and cafes on the ground floor, and the second floor you've got a business hub where you can get all your photography and type of thing you want done. But sort of thinking outside the box a bit in terms of what we do in our regeneration program, rather than just we're going to build small warehouses that you might put business into.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Burke, for those comments. So I take regarding the digital transformation of existing businesses, so 7.2, so on page 108 of your papers, 45 strategy, 7.2, there is identified the action plan to address the skills gap with training upskilling. So you're saying you want to be demystified and to be made more accessible to businesses.
If they're not using it right now, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
So you've got to actually work at the accessibility. A lot of these businesses people retire into, and they haven't necessarily kept up with into their workplace. Because their workplace a couple of years ago, it was
so if I may, by nature, I think that's where our business advisors that are going to be based at the innovation hub in North. I think that's the sort of outreach work they can do, and hopefully we have hubs in Shanklin, Sandown, across the island, so they can be sort of drop-in places as well. So that we sort of takes that sort of like a clear factual way, so it's like an open door policy, as well as sort of two-way.
Some of our seaside towns have missed out on regeneration initiatives.
Yes.
And what you need, you're not going to, what we don't need are more separate roads. What we need is more businesses. Now, if we're not only tourism businesses, you need alternative businesses. And high-tech businesses actually get the money on board. So what we want is high-tech businesses.
Which is
Facilitating that sort of high-tech business on the island, which is where I
which I think it's fair to say that's the thrust of the whole strategy and
I'm supportive.
yes.
I'm not looking at this.
No, I just want to pick up the second point that you're wanting to look at more mixed-use developments and having creating communities of residential and business. In fact, funny you should say that because on Sunday I was in Barry Island in my father's native Wales and visited such a unit as well called Good Sheds, where they exactly done what you said, shops, different businesses, residential, and it was a really humming sort of vibrant place. So even on holiday I'm always thinking about regeneration of the island.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As Wendy mentioned, we're looking for this community to help comment on the shape in the future of digital strategy. And there's one thing that I'd like a comment from the cabinet member for, please. Obviously, the delivery of economic growth from this digital strategy is going to rely greatly on the rollout of the fibre cabling, which is being done by white fibre at the moment. So clearly white fibre are a key element to the delivery of this digital strategy and to the potential economic growth from that strategy. Now, as a director of an Isle of Wight based engineering firm, we just recently explored the costs of signing up to a symmetrical speed service from white fibre. I was looking at the business fibre lease line for the gigabit service. Would it surprise the cabinet member to hear that white fibre are quoted £750 a month plus VAT for a business on the Isle of Wight to sign up to that service? That's £9,000 a year plus VAT for that service. So I really like to comment on that from the cabinet member because it shocked me, and it will not encourage, in my view, will not encourage island businesses to grow if the company which we have to turn to for that service is quoting businesses that kind of money.
Thank you for your question. I think it's very difficult for me to comment on a particular business model as such, but just to let, from my understanding, and I'll be corrected if I've got this wrong, that white fibre won the contract and the government funding to put the rollout of the fibre, but there are many other companies that are able to access the fibre facility, so you can go and get quotes, and I will do that, obviously, as any business owner will do, will go and get quotes for the service that you require from other companies. So you don't have to go with white fibre. I'm pretty sure Mrs. Perry, is that the
That's absolutely correct, but at the moment, what I'm asking for is, do you think that those kind of quotations from a key business partner in this delivery are appropriate level? So encourage growth.
It isn't appropriate for me to comment on a particular business model, or I have no knowledge at all of what you need in your business. I think it's not the right. Beg your pardon?
So we look at the recommendation on page 57. Yeah, is that okay? And so it's for us to know the progress and need with the implementation of the Digital Island and our Ryde strategy, and advise relevant cabinet member on the next steps, particularly communication and stakeholder engagement. So, we've got any recommendations on that?
Or Chairman, would you like members to go away after tonight's meeting and come back with any next steps that you believe the cabinet member would like to probably entertain, and then we can forward those on to the cabinet member at a later date?
Yeah, we're more than happy with that. So obviously it's just the listening mode. Absolutely, and obviously digital transformation is going to be a long part of our regeneration journey on the island, and we'll continue to move at pace, no doubt.
Okay. So we'll do that then. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for the update on that questions. Thank you. So moving on to the regeneration strategy update.
No. Councillor Jones Evans or
If Councillor Jones Evans wants to give a general overview, I'll answer any questions she doesn't want to pick up on pick those up forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Curzon. So we've got a very helpful kind of it's not quite a photographic, is it? But no, we've got some headlines and some pictures there, which tells the story of where we've been. And I think that we still managed to continue to draw in funding and keep moving the island forward as the regeneration strategy was written 3-4 years ago and updated obviously recently as well. So I think it's just good to have that overview that things are still going. Obviously I'm involved. Councillor George is not now there, but with the HAS in Newport, with the Heritage Approach to Action Zones in Newport, which has been very good for both towns. And I think it shows the value of what local engagement, what communities can do, because these both came from the communities and from the local councils there. I think so understanding your place is very important, and it's good to see that now Council Northwood have now completed their place plans too. So I think for me, regeneration is about understanding your place. It's about place making, and as that Councillor Perk has said, it's about thinking out the box sometimes as well. Not just about building boxes. It's about thinking creatively. What does regeneration mean? It's really going to be supporting the future of our island, but starting now. So as we have been doing. So I would say it's a few things there for me to elaborate on anything, more than happy to. And Mr. Persons here as well, to assist if anything more. But it's obviously the big thing we just put in the levelling up funds bidding for these CAM. I think we have discussed that at previous meetings. So that's going to be quite an exciting project. Should we be successful with that? So fingers crossed at the moment. So that's, again, you don't really want to hear me talking over a paper, do you really? So you're here to listen. And Mr. Curzon, maybe you want to pick up there?
Well, I think, Chair, it's just to emphasise when you look at this sort of broad range of projects that sit under that sort of broad regeneration banner. So I think sometimes people think that regeneration is just about sort of physical bricks and mortar, but when you look at this list around things like skills and business development, it's about some of the softer stuff about how we join all this up. The other thing I suppose to say is that the reason the councils get involved with this is because sometimes it takes the councils to do the hard yards to bring the commercial investment forward, which wouldn't happen without public bodies doing that work in the first place. So I think what we're trying to do here is set out what we see as some of the key projects and issues that we need to tackle in line with the broader regeneration objectives. And as we all can see from some of this stuff takes time to deliver. Regeneration isn't a quick fix. It's something that takes a period of time to deliver some of these projects, and they come forward at different places and sometimes have to be reprioritised. But I think it just demonstrates the broad range of activities that the council's engaged with across the regeneration sphere. And obviously we'll continue to keep them abreast of stuff as it gets developed, and obviously hear their comments back on projects that they can see in this list and might come forward in the future.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to hold back because I just sort of say thank you to Mr. Curzon and the whole regeneration team, because a lot of them were diverted from the strategy, the direction we're going during the pandemic, of course, processing and supporting businesses and giving all the millions and millions of pounds of grant funding went out. So that would have happened without the regen team. So regen doesn't happen overnight. We also have to be open for opportunities as well, like the venture keys situation, and that was an opportunity that came our way. But I think for me it's really important that we, look at some of the projects we want to do, and some that that might be coming our way, and build up business cases for them. I think so we're ready, because seeing where the government's going at the moment, they announce a fund and they want to when you put an application in 3-4 weeks time, when it's very difficult with looking from the stand and start this with an idea. Anyone who's been involved in any bid writing, which I was involved with, the Newport has one, it's an incredible amount of information they need, very technical information, and it's a competitive process. So the better prepared we are, the better chance we've got of getting the funding. And I think, by showing we can deliver big projects, like as Councillor Atwell pointed out earlier, the St Mary's Junction one, that gives faith that DFT or whoever the funding body is, that the Isle of Wight can deliver, that we're serious about our placemaking and our future. So I think that's the message I would like to share, really, that we want us to be prepared and have those things pull off the shelf when the next funding round gets announced. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the town parishes as well for taking ownership of their towns and doing their place plans and really getting involved. So that dialogue with them is going to continue and get stronger.
It's absolutely fundamental, and that community engagement is what got Newport and Ryde to be number 1 and number 3. Ryde number 1, we were number 3, Newport at the whole region. That was 65 applications because of that community engagement. It was so evident. We didn't have to make it up. It had come from the town parishes and the other local organisations.
Yeah, this is really good work in this place. So, anybody else like to? That's all right.
Again, this is all wonderful stuff, but again, I do worry about the technical staffing time situation, how you manage to do all this, considering we're going to have to prioritise, because all this stuff is now actually starting, it's, and I think you have to put a stop on new things. And I think we have to, but there has to be really clear prioritisation, and just checking we've got enough people to do this. It's a huge project, they're enormous. It's really ambitious and it's wonderful, but it worries me that you've only got, how many staff do you have in Regeneration to do this?
Well, it depends what you mean by regeneration for a start, because we've obviously got, as Councillor Jones said, we've got people in our economic development team, our planning team, our property team, as well as those that you might call pure regeneration people. So it's about how we blend and bring those skills together to skill up some of these projects. And you're right, Councillor, some of these are fairly easy things, but hopefully it's about how we get them to the starting line and then encourage other organisations, other agencies, other investors to bring these projects forward. The local enterprise partnership has been helpful in us developing some of these projects, and there will be other emerging things, opportunities around the Freeport status that's just been given to the sub-region, about how the council sort of looks at that as an opportunity and sees whether it can benefit from it. So we do need to flex. It is a big programme. Sometimes you do feel your bleed's spinning place sometimes. But as Councillor Jones says, sometimes the emphasis moves from one project to another, and I suppose it's just us being able to manage these projects and the expectations and look at the timelines, and through the Regeneration Members Board and reporting through this committee, we can continue to keep people up to speed. But it is a big agenda, and it's a big programme, but I think we need to be ambitious.
I would like to bring in Councillor Black.
Thank you very much. Before the pandemic, previous administration had a list of something like 26 got to sort of start to prioritise, and Neighbourhoods were top 10 within that. And it didn't always stay the same, but that you were working on. And you had one big sheet of paper, so A3 sheet of paper, but it actually had everything on, and how it was progressing with a sort of traffic light system of whether we were on time with what we were trying to achieve. For this committee, if the current administration had something similar, it would be rather good for this committee to have access to it. And if it hasn't got something similar, it might be worth considering going back and having a look at what we did have and getting something similar.
Thank you, Councillor. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, that is very helpful. Really helpful for all of us, actually. Anybody else?
I think so. Chris might just say, just obviously, to kind of put on the set, some things, you're working on a project and then you might find that there's some special work, something's living in the ground, and then that sort of derails it for a little while, because you've got environmental factors. So there's all sorts of things that do go on, and I think that's why you have to sort of twin, treble, quadruple, track your projects as well, but also be flexible to see the opportunities as well, because they can come out of the blue, and I think that's what Regen needs to be able to have that nimbleness about it as well. I think that's because you never know when it's going to an opportunity to come that could add value to what you're already doing, or what could be, it can actually give you one of your outcomes, but just in a different way.
That's why things go up and down your list as you hit problems or you see opportunities. But it's important, if you have the traffic light system, you have to be aware that everything veers towards red unless you're on top of it. So if you want greens, you have to be managing to ensure that you get your greens. Otherwise, it will all go red. And I think this is important to be tracking that and to set realistic objectives. But then, this committee should be tracking what's going on. That should be part of our weekend, because it is scrutiny of that activity.
So can we have a look at that? Do you know how that can work?
Yeah, so we're due to come back in October. So because on your full plan, work plan, it's got too much progress for key development side. So that will be presented an update then in October.
That's okay, yeah. Anybody else? No? So that's just to be advised of the current delivery. So please find that then you've got that to bring back to us in October. Yeah? Anyone out there? Okay, so moving on to the committee work plan. So what I will say about this is the one that was set before. So we've got new members, new administration. So I was wondering if we could have an informal get together in the next couple of weeks so we can have a discussion about the work plan. And maybe people have something they would like to take the lead on and look into. So I wants to see what everybody was interested in, etc. Would that be okay? Okay, that would be acceptable, yeah. Should we just look at this now?
Well, Chairman, as you say, this was the previous committee's work plan. There are some elements that obviously you would want to roll forward.
Yeah.
There may be a change in emphasis on some service delivery by the new administration. That will come out through the corporate plan later this year. But members may want to just discuss some of the key other topics that have arisen over the past 6 or 7 months that they may want to see in the work plan either for the next 12 months or looking forward over the next 2 years.
I've alerted you to it already, but I think it's important that we talk about homelessness in the work plan. That's the tip of the iceberg. There's a big need for affordable housing, and I think we should be looking at affordable housing strategies and delivery, and sort of scrutinising what we are doing and what we have done, and creating policies for how we do it better and more productively, and produce a lot more in the future. Because that's one of the big issues facing the island at present, is the availability of affordable housing, whether to rent, buy, across the board. I think that would be something good for us as a committee to be looking at.
Absolutely. Anybody else got any? But you're okay. We'll get together away from here, so that'd be good. members' questions? Is there any questions?
You have none of those right, Chair.
No? Then the chair from here now. So, that's the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah.